Hey everyone, welcome to our latest explainer. Today, we're tearing down the 2026 Chinese auto parts supplier ecosystem to help you pinpoint your perfect manufacturing partner. If you're navigating the auto supply chain right now, you know firsthand that this landscape is shifting at absolute breakneck speed. Your sourcing strategy? Well, it's got to evolve right alongside it. All right, let's just bust a massive myth right out of the gate. Sourcing in China? It is no longer just some race to the bottom for the cheapest price tag. As the market's matured, it's morphed into this highly strategic matching game. Choosing the absolute best supplier really comes down to your company's size, your exact supply chain tier, and your specific day-to-day needs. To unpack all of this, we're going to cover 5 key areas. First, the 2026 auto parts market overview. Second, large OEM procurement focus. Third, small aftermarket buyer strategy. Fourth, our core supplier matching matrix. And finally, avoiding procurement and logistics risks. Okay, Section 1. Let's look at the 2026 auto parts market overview. So the scale of this ecosystem is just mind-blowing. By 2026, China hasn't just maintained its high-volume status, it's become the undeniable primary source for literally everything. We're talking both traditional combustion engine parts and all those cutting-edge new energy vehicle systems. To actually survive here, you've got to know how to tell the difference between state-owned giants, specialized private manufacturers, and those regional aftermarket trading hubs. And geography matters a lot. This market is incredibly hyper-clustered. Get this, over 75% of the total export volume pours out of just 3 regions: the Yangtze River Delta, the Pearl River Delta, and the Bohai Rim. Knowing these specific regional specializations isn't just fun trivia. It is absolutely your first key to managing lead times and dodging quality risks. Moving right along to Section 2, large OEM procurement focus. Now, here is the absolute crux of our entire explainer. Choosing the right supplier hinges completely on your company's size. It's a tale of 2 very different buyers. Large OEMs, they need full system integration, custom tooling, and they work directly with Tier 1 suppliers, totally absorbing those incredibly high minimum order quantities, or MOQs. But on the flip side, small aftermarket buyers prioritize fast turnover, lower MOQs, and they rely heavily on authorized distributors in the digital space. You have to know exactly where you sit on that spectrum. Say you're a massive global OEM. You need absolute precision, right? Well, Tier 1 giants are your gold standard. Take YU Automotive Systems, or HASCO. They are incredibly reliable for chassis and interiors. Or Yanfeng, who practically dominates smart cabins with their unmatched R&D. But remember, teaming up with them means you've got to have the corporate muscle to meet their massive volume requirements. But hey, what if you need a component that sits right in the middle, bridging the gap between those massive OEMs and the smaller aftermarket replacers? Enter Fuyo Glass. These guys command an incredible 30% of the entire global automotive glass market. They hit that sweet spot perfectly, giving you the manufacturing cost benefits plus localized global warehouses. All right, let's flip the script. Section 3, small aftermarket buyer strategy. If you're a smaller buyer, honestly, don't even bother knocking on the doors of giants like Yanfeng or HASCO. They're just going to point to their massive minimum order constraints and turn you away. Your game plan has to be different. Verified digital marketplaces are going to be your best friend. But, and this is a big but, you must meticulously verify that you are buying from an authorized distributor and not just some general trader. That is exactly how you avoid counterfeit parts, which is literally life or death when we're talking about safety items. So how do you bypass the general traders while keeping those MOQs manageable? You go straight to the vertical industrial clusters. Need sensors or electronics? You want the traders in Wenzhou. High-end molding or die casting? Ningbo is your hub. EV components? Changzhou is booming right now. Aligning what you need with exactly where it's made will save you an unbelievable amount of time and cash. Which brings us to Section 4, the core supplier matching matrix. Consider this your ultimate 2026 cheat sheet. It is all about matching who you are with what you prioritize. Notice how a heavy-duty distributor's path leads straight to wage-high power for pure engine reliability. Meanwhile, an aftermarket safety expert, they can't compromise on red tape. They absolutely must engage someone like Joyson Electronics to guarantee rigorous DOT and ECE compliance for things like airbags and seatbelts. Now, if your brand is diving headfirst into the EV transition, and let's face it, who isn't? You've got to look at tech-focused leaders. Tupo and Mintz are prime targets here. Tupo is incredibly agile when it comes to custom manufacturing for thermal management, while Minth is leading the pack on exterior styling and EV battery housings. They prioritize exactly what modern OEM brands demand: strict technical specs and custom tooling ownership. But maybe you're sourcing those critical, often hidden components, universal joints, gaskets, drivetrains. For that, you want traditional heavyweights like Wansheng and Drungdang. They're actually a fascinating story because they've acquired several European brands over the years. That means they can offer these beautifully streamlined supply chains that blend massive Chinese manufacturing scale with super strict European engineering logic. Okay, on to our final piece of the puzzle, Section 5, avoiding procurement and logistics risks. Listen, a single mistake during the request for quote phase can literally cause catastrophic failures down the line. It's a nightmare. So your workflow has to be rock solid, following 3 strict steps. First, IATF 16949 verification. That's your baseline. If they only have ISO 9001, walk away. They aren't true automotive grade. Next, demand a strict production part approval process. Finally, cap it off with third-party lab testing from someone like SGS or TUV to ensure quality stays consistent. And speaking of nightmares, let's talk legal for a second. If you are an OEM or brand owner getting parts custom made, you absolutely must lock down your tooling ownership in writing to protect your IP. Seriously, leaving tooling ownership vague with a high-capacity molder is easily one of the most expensive mistakes you can make in this industry. Logistics in 2026 is its own kind of beast, and you've got 3 major hurdles to jump. First, verify your HTS codes to dodge anti-dumping duties, especially on stuff like glass or aluminum wheels. Second, you have to insist on vapor corrosion inhibitor packaging. Auto parts are heavy, and they love to oxidize at sea. And third, brace yourself for longer lead times on traditional combustion parts, because factories across China are aggressively retooling for the EV boom. Now, when it comes to the money, the actual financial reality of buying bulk auto parts, it's surprisingly standard across the board. Whether you're shaking hands with a Tier 1 giant or a smaller regional cluster, you're almost always going to be looking at a standard 30% deposit up front, and you'll settle that remaining 70% against the bill of lading. So, that brings us to a really great question. We hear this literally all the time, especially from smaller buyers sizing up these massive factories. If a top 10 supplier makes both OEM parts and aftermarket parts, is it exactly the same quality? In a word, no. Absolutely not. Even coming from the exact same factory floor, the specs can be wildly different depending on the production line. What that means for you is that your initial paperwork entirely dictates your final product. You have to clearly, explicitly state in your RFQ if you need true original equipment specs or if standard aftermarket performance does the trick for your buyers. So I'm going to leave you with this thought to chew on as we wrap up today's explainer. As this massive ecosystem pivots hard towards new energy vehicles, take a good, honest look at your current supply chain. Are you partnered with a supplier who's just cheap enough for today? Or have you actually found that perfect fit who guarantees your technological survival tomorrow? Thanks so much for hanging out with us, and keep learning.